The cold, sterile air of the hospital room was supposed to be a sanctuary for healing, but on that day, it became the stage for something no one could have predicted. Nurses froze in disbelief, security rushed forward, and yet, within seconds, everyone would witness a moment so powerful, so raw, that it would silence judgment and awaken compassion. What could possibly connect a billionaire Arab executive, surrounded by power, wealth, and respect, to a man covered in dirt, stripped of dignity, and forgotten by the world? The answer will leave you shaken, inspired, and deeply moved. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this one to you. The private wing of Al Noor Hospital had always been a fortress of order, wealth, and power. White marble floors gleamed under soft golden lighting, fresh flowers were delivered daily to each room, and the faint scent of expensive disinfectant hung in the air. It was the place where the most powerful men in the Middle East came when their bodies failed them: executives, ministers, and billionaires. Among them was Khalid Al-Mansour, a 45-year-old Arab executive whose name alone commanded respect in Dubai's financial circles. But now, Khalid was fragile. A recent heart procedure had left him weak and confined to his hospital bed. His empire, his fortune, and the constant stream of calls from board members seemed far away, almost irrelevant compared to the sound of his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. For the first time in decades, Khalid felt like a man rather than a symbol of power. On the other side of the city, in a world that rarely crossed paths with Khalid's, a man named Omar stumbled through the streets. He was in his late 30s, but hardship had carved deep lines into his face, making him look much older. Dirt covered his clothes, his hands trembled from hunger, and his eyes were hollow from years of being unseen. Once, Omar had been a teacher, a man of dignity and words. But a chain of betrayals, debts, and personal losses had thrown him onto the streets. Fate works in strange ways, and on that humid afternoon, Omar wandered toward Al Noor Hospital, not out of choice, but out of desperation. The air-conditioned entrance seemed like heaven compared to the sweltering streets. He was chased by guards before, accused of trespassing in places that belonged only to the rich. But something pulled him in that day. Maybe it was hunger, maybe weakness, or maybe something greater. As Khalid lay staring at the ceiling, lost in thoughts of his own mortality, the door to his pristine room creaked open. At first, he thought it was another nurse or perhaps one of his executives checking in. But instead, a figure unlike any that had entered this wing stumbled through. Gasps filled the hallway. A homeless man, filthy and disoriented, had slipped past security. His hair was matted, his clothes torn, and an unmistakable odor of the streets clung to him. The nurses shouted, "Stop him!" But Omar didn't stop. His legs carried him as though driven by something beyond his own will, straight into Khalid's private room. And then, to everyone's disbelief, Omar collapsed onto the executive's bed. His frail body pressed against the crisp white sheets, leaving stains of sweat and dirt on linen that cost more than Omar had seen in years. The security guard burst in, ready to drag Omar away, but Khalid raised a weak hand. His voice, though soft, carried the authority of a man who had led empires. "Wait!" The entire room froze. The billionaire executive and the beggar were now lying inches apart, their eyes meeting for the first time. Omar's lips trembled as he whispered, "I just wanted to rest, just for a moment." Something stirred deep inside Khalid. For years he had lived surrounded by sycophants, employees who bowed to his wealth, and competitors who envied his power. Yet here was a man with nothing, not even dignity, who had dared to collapse into his sanctuary. For reasons he couldn't explain, Khalid felt no anger. Instead, he felt a pang of recognition, an echo of loneliness, of weakness, of being human. The nurses whispered frantically, the guards waited for orders, but Khalid only stared at Omar. He noticed the scars on his hands, the way his chest heaved as though every breath was a battle. And then, something happened that no one in that hospital could have expected. Khalid reached out and touched Omar's shoulder. "Rest," he said quietly. Omar's eyes widened. He expected to be beaten, dragged, humiliated once more. Instead, he felt the hand of a man who could buy kingdoms resting gently on his shoulder, offering him something he hadn't felt in years: dignity. For the first time in decades, Khalid's heart didn't race from anxiety or greed. It raced from compassion. A billionaire who once cared only about profit and reputation now looked at a homeless man as if he were looking into a mirror of his own soul. And as the silence thickened in the room, the question began to rise in the minds of everyone present. Why would a billionaire Arab executive let a dirty homeless man share his hospital bed? The answer was hidden in Khalid's past, and what was about to unfold would shake not just this hospital, but everyone who heard their story. The silence that followed was unbearable for the staff, but strangely peaceful for Khalid and Omar. The billionaire remained propped against his pillows, his weak heart still recovering from surgery, while the homeless man lay trembling beside him, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. He had invaded a world that never welcomed him, and yet, here he was, unharmed. Security guards exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to obey Khalid's command or remove the intruder by force. The head nurse whispered urgently, "Sir, this is unsanitary, it's dangerous. We must escort him out." But Khalid shook his head slowly, his gaze never leaving Omar. "If I am not afraid, then why are you?" he asked. His voice was fragile, but the authority in his words silenced them all. Omar turned his head, his dirty hair brushing against the crisp pillowcase. He whispered, almost apologetically, "I didn't mean to. I just couldn't go on anymore. I thought if I could just rest here even for a minute." His voice cracked, and tears formed in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'll go." Khalid surprised everyone by reaching out again, this time gripping Omar's wrist. His fingers were weak, but the intent was strong. "No," he said firmly. "Stay." The words echoed in the sterile room like a command from fate itself. Omar's chest heaved with disbelief. For years he had been invisible, pushed aside in markets, chased from alleys, mocked for his smell and appearance. No one had ever told him to stay. No one had ever wanted him near. Khalid studied the man closely. Beneath the grime and scars, there was something familiar, a dignity buried deep, suffocated by circumstance. "What is your name?" Khalid asked. "Omar," he answered, his voice trembling. "Omar," Khalid repeated, as though testing the weight of the word. "You are not invisible here." Those words hit Omar harder than any blow could have. He clenched his eyes shut, his lips quivering, overwhelmed by the kindness he never expected from a man lying in silk sheets. The staff still hovered in the doorway, restless and uneasy. But Khalid dismissed them with a single glance. "Leave us." Reluctantly, they obeyed, closing the door behind them, leaving the two men alone in the heavy silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of machines filled the room, along with the distant rhythm of hospital life. Finally, Omar sat up on the edge of the bed, ashamed of dirtying the sheets. He looked at Khalid with weary eyes. "Why didn't you throw me out? Men like you don't let men like me breathe the same air." Khalid allowed himself a small, bitter smile. "Maybe I was once that man," he admitted. "But illness changes you. When you are lying here, realizing money cannot stop your heart from failing, you begin to see what truly matters." Omar listened, his hunger momentarily forgotten, his mind grasping onto every word. "You think wealth makes you untouchable," Khalid continued, his voice low. "But the truth is, it isolates you. I have lived in towers of glass, surrounded by people who smile only because they fear me or want something from me. Yet here you are, uninvited, unashamed, and somehow, you are the most honest person I've seen in years." Omar lowered his head, unsure how to respond. Shame and gratitude clashed within him. Suddenly, a loud knock rattled the door. A hospital administrator entered without waiting for permission, his tone clipped and businesslike. "Mr. Al-Mansour, this cannot continue. That man must be removed immediately. Imagine the headlines if anyone finds out. A billionaire executive sharing a bed with a vagrant? It will destroy your reputation." Khalid's dark eyes hardened. "Reputation," he repeated coldly. "Do you think I care about reputation when I nearly lost my life last week?" Do you think I care about gossip when this man needed a place to rest his body? The administrator faltered, unused to being spoken to so directly. But sir, your investors, the press. My empire will survive one act of mercy, Khalid interrupted sharply. If not, then it was built on sand. The administrator left, defeated, muttering under his breath about scandal. Omar stared at Khalid in disbelief. You defended me, why? Khalid closed his eyes for a moment, exhaustion pulling at him. Because no one defended me when I needed it, he confessed. Once, I was a boy who begged for help. People turned away. I swore I would never be weak again. And yet, here I am with you. Remind me of the boy I used to be. The confession pierced Omar's heart. For the first time, he realized that beneath the tailored suits and billions, Khalid was as human as he was, vulnerable, broken, longing for connection. Khalid opened his eyes again, his gaze steady despite the fatigue. Tell me, if you had the chance, would you rise again? Would you rebuild your life? Omar's throat tightened. He wanted to say yes, but fear silenced him. The streets had stolen his belief in second chances. He swallowed hard and whispered, I don't know if I can. Khalid's lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. Then let me help you find out. At that moment, thunder rolled outside the hospital, as if the world itself was bearing witness to the unexpected bond forming between the billionaire and the beggar. Neither of them knew what awaited them: public outrage, media scandal, or betrayal from those who sought to exploit their connection. But one truth had already been written in that quiet hospital room. Their lives would never be the same again. The morning sun filtered through the wide hospital windows, casting golden lines across Khalid's face. His breathing was steadier now, though fatigue still pulled at his body. On a chair beside the bed sat Omar, freshly washed after the nurses reluctantly allowed him access to a shower at Khalid's insistence. His hair, though still ragged, was no longer matted with dirt, and the faint scent of soap clung to him. For the first time in years, Omar felt almost human again. But outside the sanctuary of that private room, whispers were spreading. A homeless man in the wing of billionaires? Nurses exchanged disapproving glances, doctors grumbled about hygiene, and administrators worried about scandal. The press had not caught wind yet, but it was only a matter of time. Khalid knew it. He had built his empire by anticipating storms before they struck. Yet he did not send Omar away. Instead, he asked the staff to bring breakfast for two. The trays arrived, silver covers hiding steaming plates of eggs, bread, and fruit. Omar stared at it with wide eyes, his hands trembling. He had not seen food arranged so perfectly in years. He waited, hesitant, unsure if he should touch it. Khalid noticed. Eat, he said firmly. Omar obeyed, and within minutes, he devoured the bread and fruit like a starving child. When he realized he was being watched, he stopped, ashamed. Forgive me, I forgot myself. But Khalid only shook his head. Never apologize for hunger. The world has already punished you enough. Those words cut deep. Omar lowered his gaze, the lump in his throat making it hard to breathe. Later that morning, a visitor arrived. It was Sami Al-Rashid, Khalid's longtime associate and one of the most powerful voices on his company's board. Sami entered the room with the confidence of a man used to negotiating billion-dollar deals. His suit was impeccable, his cologne sharp. But when his eyes landed on Omar sitting beside Khalid's bed, his polished smile cracked into disbelief. What is this? Sami asked, his tone dripping with disdain. Khalid, tell me this is a joke. Khalid's expression remained calm. This is Omar. He is my guest. Guest? Sami scoffed. This man is a vagrant. Do you realize what this will do to your reputation? To the company? Investors are nervous after your surgery. They need stability. This. He waved dismissively at Omar, who lowered his eyes, his shame burning. Khalid's voice hardened. I built this empire with my hands. Do not lecture me about stability. If a man cannot show compassion when he has everything, then what is the worth of his empire? Sami stared, stunned. You're risking everything for a nobody? At that, Omar stood abruptly. His pride, though battered, flared. He's right, Omar said quietly. I shouldn't be here. I'm nothing but trouble. He turned toward the door, his heart pounding, ready to leave before he was thrown out. But Khalid's voice stopped him. Stay, Omar. Omar froze. Khalid looked directly at Sammy. He is not a nobody. He is a man. And as long as I draw breath, he will not be treated as less. The room grew silent. Sammy's jaw clenched, his frustration clear. You're too weak to see clearly. The world will not forgive this indulgence. Choose wisely, Khalid. The board is watching. The press is waiting for a story. One misstep, and you will lose everything. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. Omar turned back, his chest tight with guilt. Why defend me? I don't belong in your world. They'll hate you because of me. Khalid met his eyes. They already hate me, for my wealth, my decisions, my power. Let them. I would rather fall with dignity than stand with arrogance. Omar sat back down, his hands shaking. He had been ignored, mocked, rejected, yet here was a man who had everything, risking it all to treat him like a brother. It was overwhelming. That evening, Khalid asked Omar about his past. The homeless man hesitated, his voice low. I was a teacher. Literature. I loved words, stories, teaching children. But debts, betrayals, my wife left. I lost everything. The streets don't forgive weakness. I became what you see now. Khalid listened intently. For the first time in years, Omar's story was not dismissed as noise. Someone cared. And you? Omar asked cautiously. Khalid exhaled slowly. I was born with nothing. My father was a fisherman. I studied by candlelight. I clawed my way into boardrooms that despised me for my accent, my skin, my heritage. They mocked me. So I built wealth so large, they had to respect me. But in the process, I lost something. I forgot what it meant to be human. The two men sat in silence, their pasts heavy in the air, the bond between them deepening with every word. But outside, the storm was gathering. Word had begun to leak through staff whispers. A billionaire executive keeping a homeless man in his private suite? The media would devour it. Rivals would weaponize it. The board would see betrayal, not compassion. For now, though, in that quiet room, two men from opposite worlds shared something greater than wealth or poverty. The fragile, unbreakable truth that both had suffered, both had fought, and both longed for redemption. As Khalid drifted into sleep, Omar whispered softly to himself, words he hadn't said in years, maybe I still have a chance. What neither of them knew was that the outside world was already preparing to tear this fragile connection apart. The hospital room had grown tense in the following days. Khalid's decision to keep Omar close had spread beyond the white walls and into the veins of the city. News reporters lingered outside the building, their cameras hungry for the scandal. Headlines whispered of madness, of a billionaire executive corrupted by weakness, or worse, by pity. The board convened emergency meetings, investors threatened to withdraw, and whispers of Khalid being unfit to lead became louder. But inside that room, none of it seemed to matter. Khalid's health was improving, though slowly, and Omar never left his side. He brought water when Khalid coughed, adjusted his pillows, and, at night, simply sat there to make sure the man who had defended him was never alone. On the morning of the board's verdict, the silence was heavy. Khalid's doctor warned that stress could undo his recovery, but he refused to be shielded. Let them come, he said. I built this empire with my life. They will not decide its worth without seeing me. The board arrived in person, 12 men in sharp suits, with Sammy at their head. Their footsteps echoed through the hallway like a judgmental drumbeat. They entered the room, filling it with cold authority. Sammy wasted no time. Khalid, he began, his voice smooth but venomous, the board has lost confidence in you. This spectacle, he gestured toward Omar, who stood awkwardly near the window, is a disgrace. You risk billions, the trust of nations, and decades of work for a beggar. We have voted. You are to be removed as CEO. Omar's chest tightened. He wanted to vanish, to disappear before he caused more destruction. But before he could speak, Khalid raised a trembling hand. Enough, Khalid said. His voice was weaker than it once was, but his words cut sharp. I have given you fortune. I have made you powerful. And yet, when faced with a man who has nothing, you see only shame. He turned to Omar. Come here. Omar hesitated, but Khalid's eyes held him steady. He stepped forward, standing beside the bed. This man, Khalid continued, has nothing you value. No title, no wealth, no influence. But in my darkest hours, he has given me something none of you ever did: humanity. Tell me, Sammy, tell me, Board, what is an empire worth if its master forgets how to be human? Silence followed. No one dared respond. Sammy's lips pressed into a thin line, but for the first time, his confidence faltered. Then something unexpected happened. Omar, his hands shaking, stepped forward. His voice trembled, but the truth inside it gave him strength. You don't have to defend me, Omar said softly. I came here broken. I was nothing. But this man, he saw me. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. And maybe you think I don't belong here. Maybe you're right. But I swear to you, I will not let his kindness be wasted. If it costs him everything, then let me be the one to carry that weight, not him. Tears burned his eyes, but he held his ground. The board members shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, they saw not a vagrant but a man stripped bare by life, yet still capable of dignity. Khalid reached for Omar's arm, his grip weak but unyielding. No, Omar. We carry it together. And then, before anyone could react, Khalid did the unthinkable. He pulled a folder from his bedside drawer, a document he had prepared in secret. His testament. My empire, he declared, will not die with me. If you wish to remove me, so be it. But this man will inherit a portion of my wealth. Enough to rebuild his life, enough to prove that compassion does not ruin legacies. It saves them. Gasps filled the room. Sammy's face flushed with rage. You can't. I can, Khalid interrupted. Because this empire is mine, and compassion is my signature. The room fell into stunned silence. No argument could erase what had just been spoken. That night, after the board left in chaos, Omar sat in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Khalid's hand rested on his. I don't deserve this, Omar whispered. Khalid smiled faintly. None of us do. That is why it matters. Tears rolled down Omar's cheeks. For years, he had been invisible, mocked, discarded, stripped of worth. But here, beside a man who had everything, he found something no board, no empire, no amount of wealth could grant: dignity. Days later, Khalid left the hospital. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, questions fired like bullets. But when Khalid stepped out, he did not walk alone. Omar was at his side, dressed in a clean suit Khalid had insisted he wear. The world saw them together, an Arab executive and a homeless man, shoulder to shoulder, neither ashamed. The scandal the press expected became something else. Stories of greed and power shifted into whispers of humanity, redemption, and compassion. For every critic who mocked, thousands more felt hope stir in their hearts. That night, in the quiet of Khalid's estate, Omar stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. You changed my life, he said quietly. Khalid joined him, the cool wind brushing against his face. No, Omar. You reminded me how to live mine. And in that moment, neither wealth nor ruin mattered. Only two men, broken in different ways, who had found in each other the strength to be whole again. The world would not forget this story, not because it was about a billionaire or a homeless man, but because it proved something universal, that compassion once chosen can shake empires.